Thank you, Mayor. My proposed ordinance before council tonight would increase the residential homestead exemption from 8% to 20%. It's important to provide some history concerning property taxes in Jersey Village to better understand why this is the right time to provide homeowners with a tax break. While the current tax rate of 74.25 cents per $100 of taxable property value has been in place now for at least 11 years, the value of properties in the city have risen significantly during that time. As a result, property tax revenues have skyrocketed. The last time council increased the homestead exemption was 2003. Greg might remember that. He was on council at the time, when it was raised from 4% to the current 8% exemption. At that time, the tax rate was 67.5 cents per $100 of taxable property value. Property tax revenue at that time was $4.2 million. In 2017 dollars, that would be approximately $5.6 million. During the 2016-2017 fiscal year, the city collected over $8 million in property taxes alone. That is a 42.8% increase between 2003 and 2007 when accounting for inflation. Sales taxes have been no different. In 2003, the city collected nearly $2.7 million in sales taxes, which would be over $3.5 million in 2017 dollars. For the 2016-2017 fiscal year, the city collected $4.26 million in sales tax revenues. That is a 21.7% increase when accounting for inflation from 2003 to 2017. This has not been a slow climb to reach this point, and homeowners have taken the hardest hit recently. Looking solely at single-family residences, the average home in Jersey Village has seen their property tax bill from the city rise from an inflation-adjusted $1,415 in 2013 to $1,767 in 2017. That is a nearly 25% increase in taxes collected by the city from an individual average homeowner in just 4 years. In 2015, when I first raised this issue as a citizen, I was reassured by multiple members of council, many of whom are now my colleagues, that this was a temporary increase that was made necessary by the likely dip in sales tax revenues expected due to the disruption of businesses along Highway 290 during construction. Rather than witness a decrease in our sales tax base, however, we have seen a steady increase over time with an additional $1.3 million in annual sales tax revenues collected by the city in 2017 over 2015. For calendar year 2018, the Texas Comptroller has reported paying over $3.9 million to the city's general fund through sales taxes, through the 1.5% that goes into the general fund, which represents a nearly 5% increase in sales tax revenues compared to this time last year. That is phenomenal growth, and all signs are that it's sustainable. Moreover, we recently completed the redemption of certificates of obligation issued to finance movement of utilities and easements related to construction on Highway 290. By paying this debt back early, we have saved money on interest and reduced our annual debt service payments by over $833 from last year. Most of these facts should be sources of pride for this city council. Steadily increasing property values and sales tax revenues are all signs of a city that is on the rise, well-managed, business-friendly, and clearly a community where people want to live. It is time, however, for us to recognize that the windfall we received in 2015 was not intended to be permanent. Construction on U.S. Highway 290 in Jersey Village is substantially complete. Our sales tax revenue is clearly in no danger of evaporating anytime soon. If anything, in this thriving economy, it's likely to grow at an increasing rate. The increase in the residential homestead exemption would cause only a modest impact to our revenues. City staff estimates that it would cost us $550,000 per year to start and would not impact the budget until 2020. That is approximately 3% of the total expenditures budgeted for this fiscal year. It would, however, reduce the tax bill for the typical homeowner by 13%. It would put $250 back into the pockets of the average household in Jersey Village. That may not seem like a lot, but I'm willing to bet that there are many families in Jersey Village for whom a $250 annual savings could be put to pretty good use. Some have questioned whether this proposal would in any way impact the ability of the city to implement its current capital improvement plan. After looking at our revenues and expenses, including those proposed capital investments, it's clear that none of these projects would be placed in jeopardy. Using a conservative assumption of a 1% annual increase in property tax revenues, 3% annual increases in sales tax revenues, and 3% annual increases in operating expenses, we could complete our planned capital investments in a timely manner while never touching our 90-day reserve. Now, before anyone on council points out that our current policy is to maintain a 150-day reserve, that's not actually true. A review of the language of the 2007 resolution, which created the facilities reserve balance, shows that the 150-day operating level was merely used as a trigger to move funds into the facilities reserve balance. It does not create a new general fund reserve level, which remains at 90 days, which is consistent with Governmental Accounting Standards Board recommendations. Finally, let's discuss the elephant in the room, or more appropriately, the elephants in Austin. Our own representatives in the legislature, Senator Paul Bettencourt and Representative Gary Elkins, have both sought statewide caps on municipal property tax revenues. Earlier this year, Governor Greg Abbott endorsed the concept, calling for a 2.5% cap on property tax revenue growth, requiring approval of 2/3 of voters to override that cap. I disagree with their approach, not in substance, but on principle. I believe that Jersey Village has a right to govern itself with minimal interference from Austin, the same way that Texas has a right to govern itself with minimal interference from Washington, D.C. But based on the numbers I cited earlier, we have done little to dissuade them that their proposal isn't necessary. And yet, despite their best efforts over the last several sessions, they have been unsuccessful in imposing a cap. Based on the activities in Austin, it's likely that if any proposal is passed and placed on the governor's desk, it's not likely to be as stringent as Governor Abbott's proposal. That said, if a property tax revenue cap is imposed, we will manage just fine whether we pass my proposed ordinance tonight or not. If a true emergency arises which requires the approval of voters to override a cap, I have the utmost faith in my neighbors to make the right decision. I know that some of my colleagues on council may be inclined to vote against this proposal out of an abundance of precaution, a mistaken belief that our reserves and our revenues aren't stable enough to give homeowners their first tax break in over 15 years. I could not possibly disagree more. All revenue streams have been on an upward trend for years now, and we have reduced our debt payments. If we are not on solid enough footing to provide a tax break now, I fail to see what conditions would be necessary before we will act to stem the tide of rising property tax bills. I look forward to engaging in a discussion of this proposal.